Any works in this.
You may be seated. Jefferson County Court at Law number 2 is now in session. The court is in session and cause number M333686. The case is styled in the state of Texas versus Victoria Laura Smith. Let the record reflect that Ms. Smith is present in court with her attorney John Macy. The state is present with Assistant District Attorneys, Attorney Andrew Hoover and Attorney Haley Simmons. Let the record also reflect that the jury is now present and seated in the courtroom. I know some of you may be wondering where the other person is. In a misdemeanor case, we have 6 jurors. If you count as 6, the juror that's not here was an alternate. And so the alternate, by agreement of both parties, was released. Okay? So at this time, state, are you ready to proceed?
State's ready, Your Honor.
Defense, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
And on yesterday, the state rested his case. Mr. Macy, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Defense would like to call Rudolph Lassant
Rudolph Lassant.
or Lassant. I don't know how you pronounce his last name.
Mr. Lassant, would you please come forward? No, yesterday we swore you in, I'm going to swear you in again. Mr. Lassant, would you please raise your right hand? Mr. Lassant, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
You may put your hand down, Mr. Lassant. You can have a seat on the witness stand. Mr. Macy, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Could you state your name for the record?
Rudolph Lassant.
Mr. Lassant, you were here yesterday, I think you got here around 11, and the judge actually swore you in yesterday, is that true?
Yes.
Prior to yesterday, have we ever met?
No, sir.
Have we ever talked?
No, sir.
I'm gonna ask you some questions. Now, my understanding is you are currently charged in a criminal matter where Ms. Smith is the complainant, victim, whatever you want to call her. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, now I don't anticipate talking about that case. I'm not quite sure. I really don't know anything about the case. But because you are a defendant in a criminal case against, and Ms. Smith is the complainant, I want to let you know that you understand you have the right to remain silent. Don't you? You don't have to testify. You have the right to plead the Fifth Amendment if you think that you're gonna, if somebody asks you a question that might incriminate you on the case you're charged with. You understand that?
Yes.
And even though, so you understand you have a right to remain silent. And anything you say could be used against you in a court of law, right?
Yes.
You understand that?
Yes.
And especially not just saying something, you're out in the world, you're actually testifying. So you're under oath. So anything that everything you say is going to be taken down by the court reporter. And so they could use anything that you said in here in a trial, if they thought that it was appropriate. You understand that?
Yes.
And knowing all of that, you still want to testify?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what I'm gonna be asking you is the incident that occurred on or about August the 20th, 2022. Do you recall that day?
Yes, sir.
Now there's a video that's already been admitted into evidence that shows the interaction between you and Officer Garcia. But do you know who Officer Garcia is?
Yes, I remember.
And the video shows that when he got there, you were standing on the corner and then he started talking to you. Do you recall that happening?
Yeah.
And then one of the first things he asked you was something about whether or not you had just woken up. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And I think it's on the video. I believe it showed that you said that you had. And my question to you is, had you just woken up from Miss Smith's house?
I actually didn't just wake up. So I was at the apartment upstairs, but I was already up all the time.
What apartment upstairs?
It's a house in the front, and it's like a stairs that leads to an apartment upstairs where I had a friend staying at the time.
So is that the same address as Miss Smith's address?
It's like a number out basically. It's like the same building, but it's a apartment on the top of the house.
Okay,
It's like on the side street.
I see. So you were in that building, but not in Miss Smith's residence, is that accurate?
I was outside.
But when you were asleep, I'm sorry, that wasn't a very clear question. When you were asleep, you were in that building, but not in Miss Smith's house,
Yes.
part of the residence, or her residence.
Yes.
Okay. Had you previously ever been told not to go over to Miss Smith's residence?
Yes.
Do you recall when that was?
Well, probably before that time, I was told not to go around.
I didn't understand what you said.
Yes, before that time, I was told not to be around.
Okay. I actually asked you that question yesterday evening because I didn't know, because we've never talked, right?
Yes.
And you told me something about, you called it a peace bond, right?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
It's when you're not supposed to be around a person.
Okay. So you thought that you had one of those at some point in the past, before that time.
I had a trespass before that.
They actually issued a trespass warning to you?
It was a time before that we had an altercation and I had gotten a trespass warrant.
Do you remember which officer gave that to you?
Not exactly.
Okay. But you do know that it told you not to go around, not to go into Miss Smith's resident
Yes,
or
yes,
on
the
her
whole
premises?
area, yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So why did you go to your friend's house if it was in the same location?
Well, I went to a friend's house basically just to be around, and I was trying to actually come get my daughter from her, and honestly, I just really wanted to just be in the area, even if she knew it or not.
And who's your daughter?
Zariana, promise.
What's her name?
Zariana,
Ariana, how old is she?
5,
5. And who's her mother?
Victoria Smith.
Do y'all, were y'all, do you have custody rights, with her?
No, sir.
Okay. Um, so what were you trying to do that morning after you woke up, if anything?
Well, actually, when I woke up, what was on my mind was kind of to make her mad because she didn't want to be around. So I went downstairs. I was talking about I wanted to get my daughter, and if she came outside, I try to get my daughter, or I try to come in the house, or just be around. Just basically doing things to try to make her mad and get in her head since she didn't want to be with me at the moment.
Were you aware that she called the police and called 911 on you because you were there?
So,
Did you call 911?
um,
You don't remember whether you called them or not that day? That's fascinating.
Okay, Mr. Hill,
Morning, Ms. Wilson.
um,
Now, you had said that you were staying in the apartment upstairs that was conjoined to, did you say you were staying in the apartment upstairs that was conjoined to Miss Smith's place of residence?
About 29 North Florida.
Okay. Is that connected on the inside anyway? And you said you had a trespass warning. So was Miss Smith aware that you were in the conjoined apartment?
Also, 95 North Florida.
So can you tell me what your current relationship status is with Miss Smith?
There's really no relationship status at the moment.
And on that date, you were not together, but you have a shared child.
We should travel with them together.
Okay. So whenever you told officers that you still had belongings inside, what were you referring to?
Well, I already had my bags. I was just basically just trying to, I was just basically saying anything at the time.
And would you describe your demeanor when officers arrived as calm?
But it's just long, I don't, what you mean by, like, was I mad or was I angry, which, I don't understand this.
No, just were you calm at that point when speaking to officers?
I believe so.
Okay. And you answered their questions?
Yeah.
And um, from what you could see, was Ms. Smith cooperative with law enforcement on that day?
I wasn't paying attention.
So, you did see, however, whenever she came out, across the street, correct?
Yes.
And she was, um, would you agree that she was antagonistic to officers in that encounter? And by antagonistic, I mean that she showed hostility toward them. She was being angry with them.
I don't believe so.
Do you recall her yelling across the street at them?
No.
If,
Mr. Hubel, gonna take a recess at the time. Okay. Jefferson County Court of Law is back in session. The court is in session and calls number 333686. Case is style the state of Texas versus Victoria Laura Smith. Let the record reflect that Ms. Smith is present in court with her attorney, Attorney John Mason. State is present with Assistant District Attorneys, Attorney Andrew Hubel and Attorney Haley Simmons. Let the record reflect that the jury is not present in the courtroom, and we have person who the defense attorney, Mr. John Macy, has identified as a witness, a potential witness in this case. Ma'am, would you please state your full name?
Luci Richard.
Luci
Richard.
Richard. Ms. Richard, would you please raise your right hand? Now, Ms. Richard, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you may put your hand down now. Ms. Richard, as a witness, the rule has been invoked, and what that means is you're going to be ordered to leave the courtroom and do not enter unless instructed to do so by me or the bailiff. You are not to discuss this case or your testimony, but other witnesses or anyone else except the attorneys. You are not to read any report or comment on the testimony of or evidence in the case. If you violate this instruction, you're subject to being held in contempt of court. And if a person is in contempt of court, they can be assessed 6 months in the county jail, and they can be given a fine up to $500. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You may please, at this time, you can exit the courtroom. All right. At this time, Ms. Bill, if you can call the jury in, please bring in the jury. You may be seated. You may be seated. Let the record reflect that the court is back in session in calls number M333686. Case is style of state of Texas versus Victoria Laura Smith. Let the record reflect that Ms. Smith is present in court with her attorney, Attorney John Macy. State is present as with Assistant District Attorneys Andrew Hubel and Attorney Haley Simmons. The jury is now present and seated in the courtroom. And Mr. Hubel, when you finish setting up the computer, you can resume your testimony. Resume your cross-examination. You need to get someone from your office. JT.
Maybe we can make it with the audio. I was actually gonna ask some questions after the start of the video.
Turn the light back on.
So before the break, we were talking about like some, um, some facts and incidents leading up to, the events on August 20th, 2022, correct?
And
So your story was that you and Ms. Smith were no longer together at the time.
yes, but she told me she didn't want to do it, so I was doing things to agitate and, stuff like that.
So you were doing things to, you saying you were the aggressor then?
I'm saying I'm the reason that she was agitated and she was mad.
And that you were in a separate residence? Or like in a separate apartment rather?
They have stairs leading up to, it's like actual houses, it's stairs leading up to an apartment on the side, and it's like a side window. I was coming up and down the stairs, knocking on the window and knocking on the door and just saying things that I know they'll make them mad.
So, permission to publish states one?
Yes, you have permission.
Still together? Oh, man. So what's the deal now? You were asleep? And what happened? She woke. How much stuff you gonna be able to carry? Which one, the front door or the side door?
So in the video that we just saw, it's marked as state exhibit number 4. You told Officer Garcia that you were still together. Do you recall that?
Yes,
Okay. And whenever you said that she wasn't allowing you to get your other stuff, like, can you explain where your other stuff was?
well, I already had my bags, I was basically just trying to play victim when they pulled up.
Okay, so you were lying on that day
Yes,
to officers.
at that moment I didn't take control.
So, you had said that you were trying to act up just to paraphrase, that you were trying to make Miss Smith angry, right?
Yes.
Were you a danger to Miss Smith that day?
Well, in danger as in, what you mean by in danger?
Were you a danger to Miss Smith that day? Were you a threat to her?
I believe I was.
Are you a threat to Miss Smith now?
I had the moment.
So you say that despite the fact that you have a pending terroristic threat case with Miss Smith as the complaining witness currently?
Say it again?
I said, you say that despite the fact that you have a pending terroristic threat case with Miss Smith as the complaining witness currently.
Yeah, you probably said it.
And you were actually arrested at that incident, correct?
Yeah,
So why was that different from what happened to you?
why was it different?
Yeah. you were arrested for the terrorist threat, but you weren't arrested in this incident.
Objection, Your Honor, he's asking him to speculate as to why the police officer didn't arrest him. And I don't think that that's an appropriate question, because he's trying to make him speculate as to why.
If the witness,
Did what he did.
if the witness knows, he can answer. If the witness doesn't know, he can say he just doesn't know.
Rephrase your question. What's the standard objection?
Are you aware of what made these two incidents different in that you were arrested one, not the other?
You know, this depends on the officer, like,
Are you still an active participant in Zariana's life?
yes,
You know, publish states.
Okay.
States for it.
All right, man, have a good day. She say she ain't got nothing for you right now, man. Come back when she's, in a better mood, I guess. Yeah, exactly, man. We don't wanna be doing this.
Or, Your Honor, is there a way to have that volume turned up? Because I can't hear what.
Okay, he can turn it up.
Doubt that the jury can hear anything that they're saying either.
It's the max.
It's the what?
It's at the max volume right now.
Seemed like it was a little louder yesterday.
Oh, yeah, we can hear her. I, Easter, I checked them all through.
So having you, the video on stage 4, has that refresh your memory of what occurred that day?
in reference to
Well, what I was going to ask you is, do you now recall Miss Smith coming out of her home and yelling across the street at you and the police?
as I watch the video, I hear her talking. What you trying to say? I'm not understanding.
I'm just asking if you could hear her yelling across the street at you and officers.
I can hear her talking, you know.
Um, can you make other words, or was the volume too low?
I can like that's good.
State that's a witness.
Mr. Macy? Oh, hold on. You may be seated. Jefferson County Court, Law number 2 is back in session. Court is in session. The cause number 33686, case established state of Texas versus Victoria Laura Smith. Let the record reflect that Ms. Smith is present in court with her attorney, Attorney John Macy. State is present with Assistant District Attorneys, Attorney Andrew Hubel, and Attorney Haley Simmons. Let the record also reflect that the jury is now present and seated in the courtroom. State, are you ready?
State's ready, Your Honor.
Defense, are you ready?
Defense is ready to.
Okay, and prior to the recess, Mr. Hubel passed witness. Mr. Macy, you can go forward.
Thank you, Judge. I have no further questions, Judge.
Okay, may this witness step down?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, Mr. Lasaint, I want to remind you that the rule has been invoked. And you cannot talk to anyone. You have to exit the courtroom. And you cannot come back in the courtroom unless bailiff or me order you to come back in. Okay? And you have a blessed day. Mr. Macy, you can call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to call Luciana Shard.
Luciana Richard.
Yes, Judge.
Miss, your full name is Luciana Richard. Ms. Richard, previously you were sworn in outside the presence of the jury and the rule was invoked. You may take the witness stand right here. Okay. Mr. Macy, you may proceed.
Thank you.
You can pull your chair up.
State your name for the record.
Luciana Richard.
Could you speak a little, get closer to that microphone?
Yeah,
Or here.
Or,
Yes.
Or pull it toward you or do something so that, speak into that so I can hear you.
Luciana Richard.
Luciana. The reason I asked, could you spell that?
Luciano.
Okay. Because I asked you your name earlier and you said Lucy or Lucy.
Yes, just a short away.
So that's what you go by, Lucy. Okay. Ms. Richard, had we ever met before about 30 minutes ago? We have?
You said, have I met with you?
Have we ever met prior to about 30 minutes ago when you got here?
Oh.
Did we ever talked on the phone that you know of?
No, sir.
Do you recall, an incident where the police were called out to, Ogden, your mother's house? I'm sorry, let me ask you this. Who's your mother?
Victoria.
Victoria Smith, the defendant? Okay. And she lives on Ogden Street, yes?
Yes.
Okay, try to speak up. They have to hear you, and I can barely hear you, and you're talking straight to me. And most importantly, the court reporter who's sitting right next to you has to hear everything you're saying because she's typing it down. Do you live with your mother?
No, sir.
Okay. But were you there on August the 20th of 2022, if you remember?
Yes, sir.
That was the day I was asking you questions about earlier, right?
Mhm.
About 10 minutes ago.
Yes, sir.
Why were you there? You don't live there.
Because my daughter had spent the night over there, and I was there that morning.
Um, she was spending the night with her grandmother.
Yes,
And how old is she?
2.
So did you see Mr. Lasaint that morning?
Did I see him?
Yes.
Yes, that's when he was, beating on the window and stuff and saying he was trying to get his kid.
Okay. Before that, did you know that he testified that he'd spent the night, or at least he was asleep upstairs in a different
At
apartment.
his home for him.
Were you aware that he was there?
Yes, sir.
You were aware that he was there upstairs?
Mhm.
Okay. I thought you, well, um, we just talked about this a minute ago, right?
Mhm.
And I asked you that question, and you said you didn't know he was there until he was banging on the window. So I'm confused. Did you know he was upstairs or not?
Oh, no, sir, no.
Now, don't let me put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to I just want them to know what you saw.
Mhm.
Okay. So did you know he was there or
No, I
not?
didn't.
So the first time you saw him was when?
Whenever he was banging on the window,
He was banging on the window. What window was he banging on?
the side window.
Side window, and that would be downstairs?
Mhm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, sir.
Um, that side window is a window to your mother's residence.
Yes, sir.
And that's what brought your attention to that he was there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and he was banging on the window. Was he doing anything else?
He was saying he was just trying to get his kid, talking and arguing, just, well, all I heard was he was trying to get his kid while banging on the window.
Okay. So how did that make you feel?
Like, scared.
Well, you were scared.
Mhm.
Um, where was your mother at that time?
She was on the phone with the police.
Okay. She was on the phone with the police and at some point, oh, do you recall what, if anything, she was saying to the police at that particular time?
No, sir.
Okay. You weren't really paying attention to her, what she was saying. And at some point, she hung up.
Mhm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Um, and then did you ever see her call again after that time you were just talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall how many, and I'm referring to calls to the police. Do you recall how many, if there were more than one, do you recall how many she made while you were there?
Like 2 to 3 calls.
Okay. How long had you been there before you heard Mr. Lasaint banging on the window?
I had been there like 30 minutes, for like 30 minutes.
Um,
Mr. Hubel?
Morning, Mr. Richard. Again, just ask you a few questions about what happened that day. So you were at 3420 Ogden on the day of August 20th, 2022?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can I ask how old, your daughter is now?
How old she is now? 4.
Okay, she was 2 at the time. Now you did say that you heard your mother, the defendant Victoria Smith, making 911 calls to DPD on that day,
Yes.
but you don't recall the content of those calls.
No.
Um, did you interact with police at all during that incident?
No, sir.
But you said you were aware that Mr. Lasaint was in the apartment that's connected to your mother's home.
Yes, sir.
Was she aware?
Yes, sir.
And no further questions. This was the state has to vote.
Mr. Mason?
your testimony is, I'm confused because you said you knew he was upstairs. And then I asked you and you said, well, no, I didn't know he was upstairs
Well, I didn't know
until,
until whenever, I didn't know if he was upstairs or not. I really don't know where did he come from.
but you just told Mr. Hubel that you knew he was upstairs.
Well, I didn't know where he was coming from, sorry.
He was talking about, did you know he was in the apartment?
Oh,
And
no. No, I didn't know he was in that apartment.
Well, because he just asked you that and you told him that yes, you did know.
Okay, well, I didn't know that's what he was meaning. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. So I'm just trying to be clear. Or, because it didn't, you said two separate things. You didn't, he was up in the apartment. Now, where he went after, or you don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. That's fair.
Mr. Hubel?
State has nothing public this one.
Defense? Any further questions? Okay. You may step down. It's for short. And I just want to remind you that you are under the rule and you cannot talk to anyone about the case. You cannot come back in the courtroom unless the bailiff or myself tell you to come back in. Okay. You can have a seat outside. Mr. Mason, you call your next witness.
Your Honor, I'd like to call Victoria Smith.
Great. Ms. Smith, would you please come forward to be sworn in? Ms. Smith, would you please raise your right hand? Ms. Smith, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Ms. Smith, you put your hand down and have a seat on the witness stand. Mr. Mason, you may proceed.
Would you state your name for the record?
Victoria Smith?
Ms. Smith, you're the defendant in this case, right?
Yes, sir.
So you understand that you have a constitutional right against self-incrimination and you do not have to testify in this trial. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
And if you testify, then the state's gonna be able to cross-examine you and ask you anything they want to ask you. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
And so you're waiving your constitutional right to remain silent. You want to tell your side of the story, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you sat in this trial, so I take it you know what day we're talking about when I refer to August 20th, 2022.
Yes, sir.
You recall that's the day that you called 911,
Yes, sir.
on more than one occasion.
Yes, sir.
Now, when was the first time that day that you knew Mr. Lasaint was around?
It was like, probably like 5:30, I mean, it was like, to be exact, it was 5:28, because I got it on my phone, so 5:28
Was that in the morning or afternoon?
in the morning.
Okay, so how did you know that he was there?
Because he was banging on my window, and like the house I stayed in on Auburn Street, I guess they converted the basement to another side apartment, so it's like 3420A and 3420B. So the house in the side apartment, you have to step up there to go to the side apartment, and his friend stayed upstairs. So he was she was already up there stomping on the steps, and like the steps was right by my window. He was stomping on the step in the window.
Now, you don't know that he was up there, you just heard what he said, right?
No, I didn't know he was up there, so he hit the window and stuff. That's when I realized, that's when I knew he was up there. I didn't know that he was not up there.
So when you found that out, what did you do?
Before then, when he banging on the window, I was like, get away from my window. I was like, stop knocking on my window because you're waking up my baby. So I was like, stop banging on my window. He was like, he went to get, I said, five something more, you're not getting my baby, you're not getting my baby at all. And he kept banging and banging, so I called the police. Like, I probably called the police like 15 minutes after that. And then they didn't come out. I kept calling the police.
Okay, so, prior to that day, had you ever called the police on Mr. Lasaint?
Yes, sir.
And had you told them that you didn't want him around your house?
Yes, sir.
Did they, if you know, did they issue tell him, that he couldn't come around there?
They gave him a trespass warrant, and then when he drove my car into my house, they put a temporary, I guess it's a piece going against us. The first time they put a trespass warrant on him, and he went to jail. Officer Garcia arrested him from my house when he grabbed my window and went through the back door. Officer Garcia arrested him for trespassing. And then when he drove my car through my house, he also went to jail that day too.
You drove a car through your house?
Yes, sir. He took my gray car and and drove it into the bricks in front of my house.
Do you recall when that was?
This was like, I don't know the exact date, so I don't know, I don't know. the exact date.
Approximately, was it a year ago, 2 years ago?
It was like-
5 years
It
ago?
was like right up in that time when all that was happening.
Okay, well, all this was happening according to the charging instrument that happened on, you were charged with calling 911 on August the 20th of 2022, which was about 2 years ago.
Yes, sir.
So are you saying it happened, all this stuff happened about 2 years ago?
Yes, sir. All this happened in 2022.
Okay,
Like with the trespassing warrant, he had got the trespassing warrant before I got discharged. He had got the trespassing warrant, and then I think it was like right after this happened, that's when he drove a car into my house.
okay. When I asked, you were sitting here, when I asked Officer Garcia about trespass warrant, right?
Yes, sir.
And he couldn't recall whether there was one or not, which is fine. But I guess my question is, um, prior to this day, the day that we're talking about, had they ever come out to your house because you would call saying that he was there and violating the trespass warrant?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall when that was?
I don't know exactly. They came also like, August 9th, August 10th, and I know this because it's all, I be recording on my phone. I have all the videos on my phone.
Okay. On those dates, did they arrest Mr. Lassay?
They said they said Officer Garcia and Officer Radcliffe both said they couldn't arrest him because he wasn't on my property. When Rudy comes to my house and he'll do knock on the window, break down on my car, so they was like, well, we didn't physically see him breaking touching on your car or see him on your property, so therefore, because he went and stood on the street, they were like, we can't arrest him for that.
Now, on the day in question, you called him and you told him that he was there and you called 911. Why did you call 911?
Because he was banging on the window. He was just saying like he could get my kid, and like I was gonna go to work that day. I was getting ready to go to work, and he was like, he gonna take my kid, and like I don't want him to take well, I don't want him to take our baby. I don't want him to take my baby, and I don't want him, and I don't know what he gonna do because I don't know what's on his mind.
Okay. What made you feel?
I was scared. 'Cause, I mean, I don't know what's on his mind. I don't know what he was intending to do. I don't know. Like I just don't know what he was intending to do.
So that's why you called him.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So at some point, they weren't there yet, and so you called again.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I think we heard that, the second, the first exhibit that they introduced into evidence, you heard it, right?
Yes, sir.
And you would call and ask them about him calling them. Why did you think that he called them?
Because whenever like, when Rudolph really getting up and trying to get under my skin, if I call the police and say something, he'll call after I call and be like, oh, well, I got something up in the house, or I want to get my daughter, or he'll say something, and just, I don't know.
Okay.
I just don't know why he'll call, I don't know.
But, so all this time was ticking by, right? And you were waiting for the police, right?
Yes, sir.
And then so you call them again. Were you getting more and more anxious, or what was the reason why you called again?
Because when I called again, Rudolph had already came by, he had keys beside of my car. And he had keys out, when he came, he had keys out of my car, and he was already like, well, when we was going back and forth, when I was in the house, he had already said, well, you already know when the police get here, they not gonna believe you because I don't know, I do be upset.
And then so then you ultimately called again, the last time, let's say, I'm gonna just direct, I don't know how many times we're talking about it yet, but the last time you called them, okay, and you said something, well, let me ask you about the time before that. We heard you ask a question to him, about something like, you made something like asking, I'm paraphrasing it because I don't know the exact words, but it was something like, what are you, stupid or something, right? You heard that, you said that, is that right? Now, when you said that, why did you say that?
Because when I was called police, it was more phone calls than that, it was more police calls than that. And when I called, it was like, well, they on their way, it was like, at the time, like 30 minutes had passed by, and one of the calls, it was like 45 minutes, it was an hour had passed by, and I was like, it's already right here on argument 3, you know, like, it's already here, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that I was always right for saying it, but I was like, are you stupid or what, because I keep saying he's destroying my stuff, and that's all I have.
Okay, so were you, when you were calling, were you calling to harass the 911 operator?
No, sir, I just wanted somebody to come out there to come get him from harassing me and tearing up my stuff.
And so the last time you actually made kind of a, I guess, a kind of a racially charged, some people might think,
And it's not.
statement. You said something about, I think you said, you must be, I don't know, you must be some white bitch or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Right. What was that about?
And no, I shouldn't have said that, but this not racist. My daughter's 23 years old. She's biracial. Ain't nothing racist about me. It's just like, it was like a dingy question. Like I always say that. Like, it's just something I always say that. No, it's not a good choice of words to say, but I always say it like, I don't know why I say it, but I just always say it. Like, I'm not racist. My daughter biracial. Right.
Were you, were you trying to, well, first off, in your opinion, was it an emergency when you called or not?
Yes, it's emergency. Yes, it was emergency.
Every time.
Every time I call it, it's emergency.
In fact, the longer it took, the more of an emergency you thought it was, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Hill, the witness is yours.
Morning, Mr. I'm gonna ask you a few questions about the events that are surrounding this case. Now, do you currently live at 3420 Ogden in Beaumont?
No, sir.
Did you live there on August 20th of 2022?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and did you make a telephone call for assistance, to BBB's emergency line on that
Yes,
day
sir.
from that location?
Yes, sir.
You heard the recordings from states 1 through 3. Was that your recording? I mean, was that your voice in the recording?
Yes, sir.
And you were calling to report the trespass?
Yes, sir.
That was Mr. Rudolph Hussein,
Yes, sir.
who testified previously.
Yes, sir.
Um, so, Mr. Hussein was outside of your residence whenever you called?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, have you ever had a relationship with Mr. Hussein?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And can you tell me what the nature of that relationship was?
Him, my child father.
Ever in a relationship, ever married?
No, sir. We in a relationship, we wasn't married.
Okay. So, following this incident, have you ever invited Mr. Hussein to your residence or been in the same residence with them by your intention?
We did before.
Oh, after this incident?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So do you continue to see Mr. Hussein?
Like, we don't hate him like that.
No,
I
but,
do allow him to come and see the kids, see my baby.
okay. After everything that you had previously said that he's done, you still allow him to see the kids?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall how many times you called the police that day?
It probably was like 7 or 8.
And Do you, Mr. Hussein, call the police on each other?
I got photos on him.
But you can't speak to whether or not he calls them.
I mean, sometimes you.
So, you had heard the report, you had heard the recordings in states, exhibits 1 through 3. Do you think that those were appropriate statements to make to the dispatcher?
I don't think that, no, they not, they wasn't for people like,
Do you regret making those statements?
yes, I do regret making mistakes. I don't want, I don't mean to disrespect or offend nobody.
But can you recognize that the use of terms like dummy or white bitch would be abusive and offensive to someone?
I could see it being abusive, but I ain't say it like, I didn't say it like, yeah, like I say it all the time. I said it around the house. I said it in front of my daughter. She's biracial. I said, she said, she's like, boy, you crazy, boy, you stupid, like, it's just, that we say, oh, like, really, it's you crazy, what you do it for?
But as Mr. Macy previously characterized it, it is racially charged language. So you can see that it would be abusive in nature to someone who doesn't use it as an expression like you do.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't think it was racially nothing because, like I said, I said in front of my daughter biracial. There's nothing racist about me. So I wouldn't take it like, oh, I'm being racist and saying this and other, like,
And I'm gonna put it back on that a bit because in the context that you said it, and I'm gonna quote you, you seem like you have an attitude. You must be a white bitch. So you're insinuating character as well as race in that situation. Do you agree with me that that's not that's not the same way you're characterizing the word?
can you break it out? Can you break it out for me again?
In the way that you're using it in the state's exhibit, you were essentially attacking the dispatcher's character and making a racial statement in the same sentence. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't, because I wasn't taking the dispatcher in no way. I was just a statement. I wasn't saying, oh, well, you must be white, you talking like that. No, I was not saying nothing like that.
Despite the fact that you heard what you said on the recording, you still believe that what you're saying now is true?
What I'm saying is true, is I'm telling you, God, I'm true.
So, Mr. Hussein can make you feel like you're in an emergency situation. I believe the answer to that from Mr. Macy, but just to be clear.
Yes,
And yet when Officer Garcia arrived at your door to assist you, you didn't want to, you shoot him away, essentially, right?
yeah, I told him I needed help because he was already gone, and this is like all the time when he go talk, because I had a call and turn up on him before, because he was heralded like, oh, when she come out, come back, or, you don't have to leave, or he done took my property from me and ain't say nothing, and just be like, this is
But you would,
me. But, go ahead.
but you had also said in your previous testimony that he keyed up your car too.
Yes,
So,
sir.
so you didn't want to make a report or even talk to officers about that?
No, because I knew I didn't want to talk to him because I knew he wasn't getting nowhere. We had already, I had already talked to Officer Garcia before me about it, and he could be like brushing it off or making it seem like I'm the person that's throwing it whatever, or like, so I didn't want to.
So after, let's see, so after you essentially told Officer Garcia to get off your porch, you went, Mr. Lasaint was still across the street. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you had said that he made you feel like you were in an emergency situation?
Yes, sir.
So then why did you leave your home to go confront him and the officers across the street?
I didn't leave my home. I stayed in my first, I stayed in my foot because Rudy was still calling my phone from the officers. He was still calling my phone, hanging up, playing on my phone while the officers sitting right there with him.
I mean, were you still afraid of them at that time?
I went my line with our house and shit, I was outside on my porch, no, I wasn't afraid to make that line, because the police said, I knew he went to come and key my car, or drive a car, and I do nothing stupid while the police is right there.
So, but you had still told officers to leave, so, you were coming out essentially to speak to the person who put you in fear that you were in an emergency situation.
I didn't like to speak to Rudy, I didn't go outside to speak to Rudy about nothing, I didn't tell him, I walked outside my door, I didn't go outside to speak to Rudy, I didn't tell him, I was recalling telling Rudy anything.
So then, hey, can you tell me why you went outside?
Because I went out my car, I was getting ready for work, I was just getting ready to leave and go to work.
Okay. But instead of going to work, you started talking, I say talking, but you were yelling at the police. Is that correct? Is that what happened?
So he was saying I was my phone, and so I just, I don't know, probably was yelling, well, I was yelling, but, yeah, I was leaving to go to work. I was going outside to work, and him work with the police.
And those officers were there to assist you, right? Based on your 911 call?
They said it was a decision, so.
And you actually used derogatory language against those officers while they were on the scene. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, because he also have told Rudy that I was just stupid, or I was just doing something dumb, that's like doing something dumb and telling me, or saying that I'm stupid, that's not.
It was a yes or no question.
Okay.
So essentially, you called police multiple times to report what you characterize as an emergency. Is that correct?
Yes.
When officers get there, you don't speak to them at all, right? And whenever they first come to the door, you don't speak to them at all about the offense that you were alleging.
You say what? I don't think so at all. Instead of,
Yeah, I'll explain. So you don't want to make a report with them at that point, right?
no, I didn't want to make a report with them. I wanted to go to work. I was already making work. I wanted to go to work.
So, and at that point, you essentially turn the officer away at the door, who's there to assist you.
Yes, sir.
And then, as they're talking to Mr. Hussein, preparing to leave the scene, you exit your home, you say to stand there, and you yell at them from across the street using derogatory language. Is that correct?
You said, can you repeat that question again?
Yes, I can. While the officers are still across the street talking to Mr. Hussein, you exit your home and yell at them across the street using derogatory language towards them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was yelling his car, I was.
State custody.
Mr. Mason?
Just a couple of questions, Ms. Smith. You were mad, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's because they took so long that he was no longer there, right?
Yes, sir.
You thought that you'd been down that road before, right?
Yes, sir.
And you knew that because he was no longer on your premises, they weren't going to do anything.
Yes, sir.
And that made you mad, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
And you were mad. The second, I'm gonna call the second time, the first, 911 call that we heard, which was at least the second 911 call, I think, if that's right, you know?
I think they're probably like, well, that's probably the one, the first one that shot, I think that was like the third time I called.
So you were irritated then about that, because they weren't there yet. And then you called again, because they still weren't there. And I take it that you were even more irritated, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you call again, and then so you're progressively getting madder, right?
Yes, sir.
And so all of a sudden, when the police were there, you were mad, right?
Yes, sir.
You didn't think they were gonna do anything to help you, right?
Yes, sir.
And so you just weren't able just to, oh, okay, I'm gonna be normal. You were still mad.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hubel, any more questions?
Briefly, to be clear, Mr. Macy was saying that he's no longer there. Does that, when you're answering that question, do you mean that he was no longer in the vicinity or no longer on your property?
He was no longer on my property.
No other questions?
Mr. Mason?
Past witness judge. I mean, I am through with this witness judge.
Okay. Ms. Smith, you may step down. Have a seat at council's table. Mr. Mason, you may call your next witness.
That's right.
State, do you have a rebuttal?
Never voted, Robert.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, both the state and the defense have rested their cases. The court has to prepare a charge, and then we will have what is called a charge conference. And after the charge conference, then the state and the defense will do their closing arguments. And then once they do their closing arguments, the case will be presented to you and you'll have an opportunity to deliberate. It's going to take some time. The time now is about 11:52 a.m. on this morning. And so we're going to ask that you come back. We're going to be in recess, give you the opportunity to go to lunch. So we're going to actually come back at about 1:30. Okay. And at that time, we should be ready for closing arguments. Okay. Everyone, please stand as the jury exits the courtroom. We'll be in recess